Hello, I'm Rick Ward, founder of Orbit's Edge.
Hi, I'm Ralph Dinsley, known as Dins. I'm the Executive Director and Founder of Northern Spaces Security.
I'm Dr. Christopher Newman. I'm Professor of Space Law and Policy at the University of Northumbria in Newcastle in the United Kingdom. I'm also International Space Law Advisor for Cold Star Technologies.
And I listen to the Cold Star Project.
And I listen to the Cold Star Project.
I listen to the Cold Star Project.
Once you start working with leaders in an organization, if you want to develop those leaders, if you want to develop that type of organization, it's no longer about skills. They tend to have the skills. But the difference between a good leader and the best leader, a good organization and best organization, it's behaviors. It's behaviors.
Welcome back to the Cold Star Project. I'm your host, Jason Kanigan, the founder of this thing, Cold Star Technologies, a data science and process improvement firm. And I am here with Paul Rulkens. Super excited to have him. He is a Dutch consultant, president of Agrippa Consulting. Paul doesn't know this, but I've followed him for a long time, and it took me about a year to get the nerve up to ask him to be on the show. Now, this has become a space industry show, but I do not want you guys ignoring all the organizational behavior stuff that you need to grow a good company. It's not enough just to have technical things. So I wanted Paul here on because he has a unique perspective that I like, and he's kind of in line with Paul Taylor, the lazy project manager, Joe Paris, who I've had on from the Operational Excellence Society, that sort of category of folks who we all think alike, these folks and me, and I know that we need to bring this to the space industry. So, as I said, Paul has been president of Agrippa Consulting for a long time. He had 10 years in various roles at a multinational called DSM, out of the Netherlands, including, I love this, the last role, Senior Consultant High Performance Culture. That is a pretty snazzy title. He is a chemical process engineer, very different from the process engineering that I do, which is business process engineering. And he is the author of a couple of books, The Power of Preeminence, which we're going to get into, and I like this one too, How Successful Engineers Become Great Business Leaders. It's not that easy. Thanks for being here, Paul.
Excellent. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Well, let's get into a discussion here about your education and experience as a chemical process engineer. How has that affected your views, the direction of attack, basically, on business and company or culture change?
Yeah. As you said, I was trained as a chemical engineer, and what I realized, and probably that's what you realize afterwards, after the training, is that there's a focus on three areas in the training. The first one is you focus on process design. So you learn how to design a process to understand the method to the madness. The second one is you're working with reality principle, which is a very important concept for engineers. Because if you don't work with reality principle, then many of the things you do as an engineer will fail. And the third one is that you quickly learn to apply accelerated learning, which is to understand also aspects outside of your field of experience, outside of your silo. And I'll give you an example. There are many engineers who apply these three things, especially accelerated learning, outside their field. Many engineers who are excellent in marketing, excellent in sales, excellent lawyers. But what you see is very few lawyers or marketing executives or sales executives becoming an engineer. So it's really a strength. So these are three things: the strength, process, thinking, reality principle, and accelerated learning. And it's very helpful to understand and apply the method to the madness, especially when it comes to building high performance cultures.
Okay, method. I love that word, and process, yes. So, and I'm sure every single one of our listeners and viewers would like to know more about accelerated learning. Other than Jay Abraham, who really pounds on about the strategy of preeminence, and I've been following him for ridiculously too long, probably 20 years. I think he's got a different take on preeminence, though, than you. You're really the only other person I've seen in the last bunch of years strongly promoting this principle of preeminence. What does the word mean to you?
What it means for me is that you design yourself, design your organization to stand apart from all the others, to stand apart like a tall giraffe surrounded by tiny field mice. And the image is that you're becoming so attractive for the outside world that it's easier to do business with the people who love you and doing the things that you love to do. Now, what I've always focused on when we talk about preeminence is a systematic approach of doing it. So it's what I found, it's not a random shotgun, hopefully things will work out well, but there are certain systems, certain processes, certain ideas, certain habits. If you start embracing those, you will quickly see that you get results and you really move from where you are to where you want to be.
Excellent, excellent. Folks, Paul here has a couple of TED Talks on YouTube. You can go and Google him later on as well and learn more about this. So as a positioning strategy, then, it's very important, again, to follow a process, and you have that lovely imagery of the giant amongst the field mice and that. Can you give us an example of how this might work for the execution or delivery side of the business?
Yeah, absolutely. If you apply this to, for instance, business execution, getting things done, the method to the madness here consists of 3 building blocks. One, you need clarity, to know exactly where you want to go. The second one, you need focus. There are a million ways of achieving success, but only few will give you energy, will help you get there where you want to be. And the third one, execution. So getting it done. So what is the system to get things done? And once you start focusing on these 3 elements, clarity, focus, and execution, and you build the habits that belong to getting clarity, that belong to maintaining focus, and that belong to having a consistent execution method, all of a sudden you get a lot of things done, and which are important things that you get done as well. So what I tend to do, I always focus on these 3 areas, typically when people struggle with execution power, and then I'll take a look at what is missing in the method to the madness. Or what is too much. Often we simply need to take things out in order to be successful. So that's typically an example of a method to the madness, a systematic approach of getting there to preeminence.
Okay. Now, there's a lot in what you just said. A, you talk quickly. There's a lot of information delivered in those sentences there. So I heard a lot about things that bring energy, clarity, focus, and getting to that execution. How does preeminence impact operations for you? I mean, let's dig into some details here. You've offered some theory. Let's hear maybe a practical example of what that looks like in practice.
Yeah, I'll give you an example of what it means in practice. And I'll give you an example when it comes to leadership and operational leadership. Here's an example in leadership. Preeminence means that as a leader, you should make a difference between agreements and expectations. Agreements and expectations. What's an agreement? It's something that is clear, that is mutual. There's a time involvement, a timeline, a date. But there's also an escalation process. In other words, if I can't make the agreement, what is it that I'm supposed to do? And every single agreement has those 4 elements. Yeah? And an expectation is everything else. Yeah? Now, what is preeminence? Preeminence means that you as a leader focus on those 4 elements, start to build behaviors in your organization, that it becomes an agreement organization. And you know what's beautiful? If you have an agreement organization, all of a sudden, and not only things are getting done much easily with the least amount of effort, but people are attracted to you as well. Clients want to work with you. You will attract the right talent. And all of a sudden becomes very easy to become preeminent, to move in that direction, the tall giant idea. So that's an example where you can apply the method of preeminence to an organization.
Okay, and I can see flashes of where this is applied in my own life, where if you get a good agreement in place with people in and outside of your organization and you're all working on a project, things do proceed faster. Because you all agree to show up when you show up, you're there, you know what you're going to work on. It's not a big struggle. And these things sound really simple, but they will hold you up if you don't get that cleared up. So I heard you a few moments ago say the phrase taking things out. And that came from the clarity and the focus. And I'm going through something right now where we have client work. That's one thing. But I've also got like 5 or 6 initiatives that I am working on, and it's too much. And over the last couple of weeks, I've realized my energy is split in too many directions. I'm not getting energy, I'm giving it, and I'm getting worn out here. And so I am going to need to strategically quit probably 3 of these things. And it's not fun, but it may be in the future. So you've developed this concept of strategic quitting. Tell us what it is, please, and how to apply it.
Yeah, this is what strategic quitting is, and it connects to what I call the Michelangelo principle. If you study history, Michelangelo, the great artist, he made the David, one of the greatest sculptures in the world. And the story goes that people asked him, Michelangelo, how did you make the David? And what he said that was interesting. He said, I had this big giant piece of marble. I imagined the David inside, and then I simply took away everything which was not David. And that's the great concept of strategic quitting, to take out everything which is not David. And what it means is, once you have an ambition, a vision, a goal, then imagine what the goal looks like, but also imagine everything which is not part of that goal, and then simply take away everything which is not part of this goal. And that's what I mean with strategic quitting. Often it's much more effective to take out stuff than try to add new stuff. I give you an example, and I go back to the earlier example. If you talk about agreements, the difference between agreements and expectations. If you want to move to an agreement organization, then simply take out everything which is an expectation. So once you realize this is an expectation, okay, take it out of my system and replace it with an agreement. So that's the idea of strategic quitting. In the end, that's the step that you can make.
Okay, my mind is changing about this now. This is very interesting, the agreement and expectations, because I'm seeing mistakes I have made in client work. Where the expectations have been laid out there, but the agreements haven't been there, and that leads to poor performance, or frustration, annoyance, that kind of thing. Very, very interesting. Are there any circumstances, now I can think of some, where this would be a bad idea, the strategic quitting? Probably when you have agreements laid out with people, you don't want to start just quitting. Right?
No. Strategic quitting is always a good idea. But here's the circumstances where the bad idea, and that's the circumstances where strategic quitting is not strategic, but it's simply quitting. In other words, you lose sight of the goal and you decided to give up. Now, what's the difference? What's the distinction between the two? Here's the thing. There's a difference between what we call goals and alternatives to achieve those goals. And the trick is to be very persistent and focused on achieving the goals, but be very flexible in the alternatives to achieve the goal. For example, if I want to travel to New York, I can go by plane, by bike, by boat, by car, and those are all alternatives. Now, I need to be very focused on being in New York, but I can be very flexible in which alternative would work best for me. What strategic quitting is to look at the alternatives and move. And once I get stuck with an alternative, simply move to the other alternative, the next alternative, the next alternative. And this is how you can apply strategic quitting in your own world. So there's a difference between strategic quitting and simply quitting.
Wow. Okay. I'm really getting the sense of the thought process involved here. It sounds straightforward, but I really want to caution our listeners and viewers that it is not this easy to keep your eye on the ball. This company, Cold Star, investigates other companies, and the divergence between what the founders, owners, managers, leaders think they're doing and what their people are actually doing is often so broad. It's like they're two different organizations, and a lot of the value that we create is in bringing that back into one direction alignment, right? Between what leadership wants to be happening and thinks is happening and what people are actually executing. I have a question that's not on our sheet here, Paul. How did you choose the name of your company?
The name Agrippa. Agrippa has an interesting background. Agrippa, if you look at history, he was the right-hand general of the first emperor, Octavianus, August. And what happens with Agrippa, that was an interesting story. He was a brilliant strategic mind. So what he did, he took care of all the stuff that made August the big emperor. Yeah. So he was the guy in the background, the strategic background mind, the mastermind in the background. So I was inspired by that. I thought, well, let's call my company Agrippa and make sure that I operate behind the scenes as well, because that's my objective in my company. My objective is to make leaders, to make organizations which are already successful even more successful.
Interesting. And I knew the Agrippa name from history, but this is another point where you and I are in alignment about being in the background. I want this company, Cold Star, to be the plumbers of the space industry, the infrastructure, the boring stuff nobody else wants to touch. Right? And I'm perfectly fine with that role. Let others have the rocket launches and the fame and all that stuff, right? Go ahead. So let's look at high performance culture. Obviously, near and dear to your heart. Your final work role was as that senior consultant, high performance culture, which is very cool. What do you mean by that phrase?
What I mean by the high performance culture is two things. First of all, it's typically part of an organization which is in the top 10% of their market, of their peers. So they are the top of their organization. And the second part is they are able to be and stay at the top because they know why they are good. So they have built the habits and the behaviors, the culture, so to say, the mindset, habits, behaviors, which will help them to be at the top and stay at the top. And that's what I call a high performance culture. So it is not only an aspirational thing, it's something you can achieve. And there are several ways of doing it. So it's not a pipe dream, it's not based on luck, but it's based on a very systematic approach to grow your business.
Okay, yeah, because that was a question I had here. Is this just a pipe dream sold by management consultants? And maybe for 90% of the marketplace, it kind of is because they're not willing or able to execute on it. So what do you provide then with Agrippa that enables organizations to move to that top 10% and achieve a high performance culture?
Yeah, my focus is always I typically work with leaders, senior leaders in an organization, and once you start working with leaders in an organization, if you want to develop those leaders, if you want to develop that type of organization, it's no longer about skills because they tend to have the skills, but the difference between a good leader and the best leader, a good organization and best organization, it's behaviors. So what I typically tend to do is I help them with understanding which behaviors are necessary. Then I help them with taking out all the stuff which is not according to these behaviors. So strategic quitting certain behaviors, I call this kryptonite behaviors. And then I help them to role model these behaviors throughout the organization. Because once they start to role model the organization, you see an organization change. The minimum behavior that the leader shows is the maximum behavior that the rest of the organization adopts itself. And this is typically my process where I help and consult organizations to go to preeminence.
This is Jason Kanigan from Cold Star Tech, and I'm excited to share with you a new offer from Cold Star that we are bringing out to help both space founders and venture capitalists who fund space companies. And it's on two levels. The lower level is a VC who is looking at possibly funding a space company, but they just don't get it. Right? And a lot of tech founders want to come out and create some sort of technical capability, but they do not understand business. And so you'll look and you'll go, where's the customer here? Where's the business model? And they'll go, but I want to make rockets or something, right? And it's really cool. Well, that, as we know from the dot-com era, is not a viable business model. And so you bring us in. We've got great technical expertise on the space side, folks who have done this sort of assessment before, like our technical engineering advisor, Dr. Rick Fleeter, myself in the process engineering field, plenty of other people with brains to look at this problem so that you don't have to blow your brains out trying to figure out how to make this work. And on the company side, it's a benefit for them because we will show them the roadmap to how you're going to get funded, how you will want to fund them, what changes to make to get VCs excited about putting money in. And so that's good for you. Right? The second level is at a deeper and higher level at the same time. It is for venture capitalists who have given a seed round to a company a space company. And that has gone on for a little while, 6 months, a year, something like that. And it is time, as COVID has made it, to double down or get out. Those are pretty much the choices, right? It's time to invest further in a thing we already know, which seems to be the direction VCs are going in right now. They don't seem to want to look at new things or stop, just kill the project. And so the good news is, in that situation, there's a lot more going on. There's more meat for Cold Star experts to get in and analyze, right? You're going to have processes in place, whether they know it or not. We'll be able to flowchart those and maybe accurately document them for the first time so we can get some kind of value chain going in the organization. We'll be able to test whether the leadership is the right group of people or whether you're missing something, the strategic direction, the business model, all this stuff. So if this sounds interesting to you, reach out to us. You can email me at jason@coldstartech.com or just connect with me and message me on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way to do it. And I am excited to talk to you. The kind of transformation that we're able to offer here is beyond anything you'll see out there. And as a VC, this will save you so much time and energy, right? Like if you're a VC and you've got 100 companies to look at, you've got 3 days a year to look at each one, maybe, right? That's not really good enough, is it? Wouldn't it be better to have experienced, expert space people who understand space, right? Look at this investment and tell you, here's a grade, right? Here are several grade areas. Is this thing ready to pour gasoline on the fire, or is it just going to go up in smoke? This is Jason Kanigan from Cold Star Tech. Let's get back to the interview. Where do values and principles and vision fit into all this? Because you've talked about behaviors, which I think of as the bottom of the pyramid, right? The trickle down. And I get irate with folks who have spoken up and said, culture is a thing that should just naturally, organically develop. And I think that's crazy. It's like, well, I'll just put my ship out to sea and wherever we drift is where we'll end up. And it just, whatever hair I have left, I want to tear that out if I hear that kind of thing. So where do these things fit in for you?
Here's a simple rule. You will never get the new results that you want from the existing behaviors that you like. In other words, if you have a vision, I want to have a new result, there are two things which are critical to achieve that vision. And that's usually not what people focus on. Usually people focus on the spreadsheets, and these are the projects we're going to do and the cool technology we're going to develop, etc., which is all important, but that's not the two things you need to focus on. The first thing you need to focus on is the question, which behaviors do I need in order to be successful? Yeah. In other words, what is it that I need to change in myself, in my organization, from a behavioral point of view, in order to get there? So that's the first question. And once you start to answer that question, well, we need to do this or this or this, these are typically behaviors. Then once you start working on those behaviors, you automatically start to achieve the vision, achieve the goal. So that's one thing. It must be a conscious process. You can also make it subconscious or unconscious as it happens, but then your failure rate will be much bigger. So that's one thing. The second thing you need to ask once you got a vision is, what is that we need to quit? Strategically quit. In other words, what is it that we are doing right now, which is no longer part of that vision, which we need to take out in order to release the time and the money and the energy which we need in order to build this new vision. And that's the funny thing. Whenever I work with companies and I look at strategy, those are the two big items, the most important items, often missing. What is that we're going to quit? Because usually we do things on top of, which is a recipe of failure. And the second thing, which is often missing, is which behaviors are we going to build?
I'm remembering back from your TED Talk where you have mentioned what companies do when they get into trouble, or even individuals when they get into trouble, is the tendency is to want to pour on more of the same. But right, as you've explained, that's a problem. And the issue is you're kind of good at it and you like it because you're kind of good at it. But the problem is treading on that hamster wheel even faster is not going to get you anywhere. It's still not, it hasn't gotten you anywhere, and it's not going to. So you actually have to stop doing that. So when you say, what are the new behaviors that the organization needs to do to move forward? That may sound, once again, like a simple thing, but it's not. right? Like, how are you supposed to arrive at an understanding when you're in a, like, that's in the I don't know what I don't know realm to me, right? What behaviors do I need to adopt in order to achieve? So I guess you've got to go to the new vision and back out to the behaviors, or maybe then it's time to call in some expertise or something, hire some consultants, hire some experts to show you how to achieve or model an organization that's doing what you want to do. Hopefully
there are two practical ways of doing
Yeah.
this, because if you adopt a mindset, that's the first step. Right, we need to work on the behaviors. That's the first step. And there are two ways to do this. The first way is the simple and fast way. And the simple and fast way is simply, I put you in a time machine 5 years from now. And you and I, we take a tour through the company. We walk the company. And then we look at what people do, how they behave, what they do different, what you do differently. And this will inform you perfectly what the new behaviors are going to be. And so once you have this little time machine thing, the behaviors become clear. So that's the short one. Here's the more advanced one. And that's what I typically do with management teams. I conduct what we call a pre-mortem exercise. Pre-mortem exercise. And what is a pre-mortem exercise? It's the opposite of a post-mortem exercise, where you look at the body and say, how did it die? You look at the bankrupt company, how did it go bankrupt? No. Pre-mortem, you say, imagine 5 years from now. And this company has failed so spectacularly that the Harvard Business Review is sending journalists to you to interview what happened. What happened? And you're sitting here and you give an answer to this journalist. So what is it that you're going to tell the journalist? And the funny thing is, once you ask that question to a management team, they will know. They will tell you, listen, we had the technology in place, but we didn't build an organization focused on customer intimacy. Or we were so gung-ho in moving quickly that we had the mindset is we can do it ourselves. We don't need any expert. Or we had a great vision, but we completely lack the execution power and the follow-up, the leadership behavior follow-up to make things happen. And this set of answers will tell you immediately, these are the behaviors that we need to build as well. So two very practical, very powerful strategies. First of all, the time machine, and the second one is the pre-mortem exercise.
Yeah, I really like the second one. The first one I'm a little wary of like, that's still in the don't know what you don't know. But on the other hand, you said earlier that skills are not a problem, that the leadership usually has the skill set. It's the question of how it's applied. And so, as you say, if you can identify what is missing, you can always go outside and get that or develop it in some way or another.
Absolutely. Skills in the end is a commodity, and building skills is important. If you can't build it yourself, go outside. The trick is behaviors, because that is how you take the next step in any organization.
Okay. How dependent on hiring great people is a high performance culture? We hear a lot about A, B, C performers, and you should get rid of the low hanging fruit, the dead wood and all that. Is that really the case, that some people are just C players and always will be, or is it because they haven't been engaged properly by the culture of the organization?
It can be a couple of things. Now, let me focus on your point about hiring. There are two different things I look at when you hire. First of all, do they have the skill set? Can they be applied, or do I have to train to bring them up to speed? And the second thing is, do they have the mindset? In other words, do they realize it's their behaviors which make a difference? What I have found is that, especially with professionals, building skills is relatively easy. When people are motivated, skill building, it can be done quickly. Exceptions are there, of course. I mean, deep mathematical skills, it takes a lot of time. But generally speaking, skills are being built quickly. The mindset, on the other hand, is much more difficult to engage. So my preference is always to hire based on mindset, because you can build skills. So that would be my first remark when it comes to hiring people. Now, the second thing is, how important is hiring people? Well, here's the thing. What happens, especially for leaders, is that leadership in companies can be a very lonely affair. It can be a very lonely affair, because where's the success environment where you can cry or test ideas without losing face, without losing connection with your organization? So the trick is to hire people which will also help you to build a success environment internally, internal success environment. And if you combine it with building an external success environment, you are ready to succeed as a leader. So that's the second reason why hiring good people or excellent people is a good thing to do.
Awesome. Well, that answered my question. So good stuff there. Let's talk about managing change. 2016, I spent most of that year working with a Dutch change management consultant. All we did was deal with companies of 1,000 people or more. Speaking of which, I'm going to ask you later who your ideal customer is. But is managing change even a term that you use?
I never use managing change,
Yeah,
and
okay.
the reason is that change is everywhere, and managing itself becomes a bit of an oxymoron.
Mm-hmm.
We manage change even if we brush our teeth, right? So it is a term without meaning. The term which I tend to use is building high performance organizations. Because that is much more aspirational. So it's not only that we want to get rid of the status quo, but we want to go to the next level, and not only the next level, but really in the top 10%. So that's typically the aspirational term I use, and that immediately connects to those people who want to take the next step, and I'll be tired of the status quo.
Okay, so we've already covered what the framework looks like for that. Let's finish up then with some whatever you feel like sharing, with confidentiality and compliance and all that stuff. I would love to hear some horror stories, or at least one terrible story, so that people can hear what red flags sound like, right? And also maybe a success or two in the field.
Yeah. He had horror stories. The horror stories. And I go very early to my career. I was an engineer, and I was a very linear thinking, right? Linear thinker. And as a linear thinker, I was managing change processes in a manufacturing plant, and I did this in a very very structured way, like engineers do, with Excel. And the horror story is, I told my boss, listen, we have 100 management change, and we have a huge backlog. And with this Excel sheet, I looked at the resources. We can make it happen. So 4 weeks time, it's done. 4 weeks later, I had to go back to my boss and said, the list has increased. So we haven't decreased, it has increased. So huge failure. And the reason that it failed, and that was a big lesson for me, the reason that it failed is, on paper, it looked great. Great process, Excel management, etc., etc., etc. But the key element, which was the behaviors, I did not touch. I assumed that if I would say, let's go, we all have the behaviors, and after today we are ready, everyone will be ready. But this is not how the world works. So humans are different from process engineering equipment. That's a very good lesson that I learned. That's a bit of a horror story, but again, there's a silver lining there, because I never made that mistake. Now, he has success stories. And I'll give you one. I was working with a company, and they were stuck. They were doing well, but they were stuck at a certain plateau. So we were looking at the business on a strategic level, and then I introduced the concept of preeminence. And I said, what would it take to take the next step? And then they realized what it takes to take the next step was not only behaviors, but especially strategic quitting. They needed to have the courage to get rid of the work which was easy, which was profitable, but was not part of their vision anymore. So what we did is we devised a plan to get rid of the bottom 20 or 25 customers, to fire those. You can fire customers, right? And it was a daring move, and people were scared, but we did. Well, we introduced them to the competitor. So it was not blunt, we didn't fire, we introduced it to the competitor. And all of a sudden, this released so much energy and time that they started to cater to their best customers, but also find customers which were even better than their best customers. And this is how they massively grew. Within 2 or 3 years, they doubled the revenue, simply with this courageous approach. So this is an example of how you apply a strong concept of strategic quitting to really improve a business.
Excellent. I will echo both those things. When I was a plant manager when I was 25, and I didn't give a damn about people's feelings. If there was a new system or something to be used, that's what we were doing, and I just ran over people, and yeah, you can imagine how well that went. I've learned to soften over the years and get buy-in, and I'm much more on the, okay, let's make a sale first and get them in, on the vision, and have it be their vision, not mine, and then on the strategic quitting side, I've seen that and also helped people with it. And yeah, as you say, there's the fear in the beginning of, oh my gosh, we've got this baseline of revenue and customers and work type, and we know that and we're comfortable with it. The problem is you don't get to a higher level by sticking with what's comfortable. And in every case, when they fired that lower level of customer that no longer fit their vision, it opened up the room, and the new, it's like the nature abhors a vacuum. Paul knows this. I'm explaining it for our listeners and viewers. The new customers, the type that you want, come rushing in. It is the darndest thing. I've seen it over and over again, and so fast. So I'm excited for clients for Agrippa, or of Agrippa, so that they can experience that kind of transformation. Paul, what kind of things are leaders saying and doing? What kind of organizations are they at that would be a good signal that they should be talking to you?
There are a couple of signs. The first sign is typically those organizations which are doing well, and leaders which are doing well but want to take the next step. So they build on successes. So that's the first sign. The second sign is that they are very much aware of their strength. So they build on their strength. They don't have the ambition to somehow compensate their weaknesses. No, these are our strengths. We want to become better at what we do. So that's the second sign. And the third sign is they understand that the next step is about behaviors, taking the next step in behaviors. And they especially tend to be open to sometimes very uncomfortable feedback regarding their behaviors. I mentioned earlier, if you want to help, especially senior executives, senior leaders in organizations with their behaviors, it's more about taking out the behaviors which are not helpful, which basically mask their strength. For example, I sometimes work with leaders who are bad at listening. So they listen to reply instead of understanding. I sometimes see leaders who add too much value. In other words, they are so enthusiastic, they are so focused, they are so can-do, gung-ho, that whenever there's an opportunity to add value, to add their voice, they do this. And they also do this at moments where it is not necessary, and it destroys commitment. Imagine you have a great idea, come to your boss, and your boss says it's a great idea, but if you do this differently, it would be even better, which is irrelevant, but the boss thinks I'm the boss, I need to do something. Then what happens, all of a sudden, commitment to this idea drops. Yeah? So right. The trick for those leaders is to simply stop with this type of behavior. They have to be what I call open to executive babysitting, where I simply tell them, stop doing this. Stop it, because you will be much more powerful, much more effective if you simply stop doing this stupid stuff. And they need to be open to that one. They need to be open to understand, if I want to grow, this is where I need to stop. This is where I need to role model, and I need to be open to feedback and making it happen. So that is typically a third characteristic of leaders and organizations I love to work with.
Excellent. Yes, and I've noticed that you do stop when you're done saying your thing, and that thing is, I'm going to do it now. It's called painting seagulls in the Sandler sales training. Painting seagulls into somebody else's picture. Oh, that's a nice painting you've done there, Paul. It would be nice if there were some seagulls in it. Well, I didn't ask for those. I didn't want them, said Paul, and now I don't like the painting. So. Or the vision. So this has been really, really good. I'm going to share this a lot. I recommend people pick up your books, The Power of Preeminence, and also How Successful Engineers Become Great Business Leaders. Those are on Amazon and eBay. And you've got your website. Paul Rulkens, President of Agrippa Consulting. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. It was a great pleasure.
This is Jason Kanigan from Cold Star Tech. Thanks a lot for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you do want to get email notifications of upcoming episodes or episodes that have just been released, and maybe a little news sprinkled in here and there, you can sign up for email notifications at coldstartech.com/MSB. That's short for Make Space Boring. That's another little show that I do. It's once, twice, 3 times a week, something like that. Anytime there's news or an update on who I'm meeting and what I'm studying in the space field. So you can go check that out. On the YouTube channel, I can do something that I cannot do on Anchor for the audio only side of things. The YouTube channel allows me to have playlists, and so you might want to go to the channel, the Cold Star Tech channel, and check out those playlists, because you will find you can go down a rabbit hole basically into several areas like space law and policy, small sats, and I think that's a lot easier than trying to scroll through 130 episodes or something like that, looking for the thing that you want. So I recommend going and checking that out. And remember, if you're ready to take your space business to the next level, or you're a VC looking for deep and very valuable insight into a space company you're looking at investing in or investing further in, come and talk to us. Thanks for listening.